Dear colleagues, I propose that we start because we have a very full speakers list and also indeed a very, very topic on today's agenda of our extraordinary meeting, because we will discuss the EU UK deal. And with that, it's also the only point of our agenda. I see the agenda adopted. Let me move to agenda item 2, that's the chair's announcement. We have interpretation available in 5 languages, in 6 languages. Just let me remind you, we could not secure interpretation in all languages because it's an extraordinary meeting and we are still in Corona times with a lot of constraints. So apologies for that, but indeed 6 languages, I guess, is already a good starting point. As usual, I have to be very strict on time because we have a very full list of speakers today and a lot of colleagues want to take the floor. So please stick to the time that was allocated to you. As always, the meeting is web streamed and all the documents you can find in your e-meeting. I hope that also a lot of people from the outside are listening and watching today, because it is very important indeed to have this debate about our parliamentary assessment of the EU UK deal. So first of all, let me welcome the representatives of the Commission here in our mostly digital meeting, because I think it is very important that we have the opportunity to ask exact questions to the Commission in order to get a better understanding of the text. But of course, the discussion today should also serve for building our own opinion as IMCO, as parliamentarians. So please also feel free to not only ask questions, but of course also tell us what you think, what are problematic points, good points in the deal, because we as IMCO, as you know, will also contribute in a form of a letter to the process in the European Parliament. I think the IMCO perspective on the important EU-UK deal is very, very important, not only when it comes to the integrity of the internal market, that was always a declared goal of the EU negotiation team, but also when it comes to customs, consumer protection, of course, also services. And I think also in general, as the Parliament, we have to check if the parliamentary oversight is enough and is regulated well. I think I can probably speak for everyone in the room or here online that all of us were very relieved that there was finally a deal on Christmas Eve, that we didn't end up in chaos and in a no-deal scenario. But this, of course, should not prevent us to properly scrutinize the deal. It is needless to say that any agreement cannot be as good as EU membership, but I think that, of course, it's now not time to look backwards, but to look forwards and to really see how we can work with this proposed deal. I mentioned already that we have to take our parliamentary scrutiny very seriously. This is, of course, a little bit difficult because we only have very limited time. And also, the agreement is already provisionally in place. The Parliament had in the past fought a lot against this provisional application because, of course, from a democratic point of view, it's a little bit of a problem. So I really hope that this will be the absolute exception. So with this, let me move to the Commission for some introductory remarks. We have several colleagues from the Commission present because there's so many different areas that are important for IMCO. And after that, we go to a round of questions and remarks. So we can probably start with Mr. Fernando Perao de Pinig for customs for 7 minutes, please.
Please push the speak button, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. Would like to say to present the agreement the main provisions concerning customs matters. The main outcomes in the customs area we divide in different parts that we have in the agreement. We have provisions on customs and trade facilitation. We have also a protocol on value-added tax and recovery of taxes. We have also a protocol on mutual administrative assistance. And also we have provisions on an annex on mutual recognition of authorized economic operators. And finally, I will say some words on the question of rules of origin that will be developed by my colleagues from DG Trade. In the area of customs, there is a comprehensive customs and trade facilitation chapter, which is aligned completely with the EU texts in other free trade agreements, that they fully respect the integrity of the Union Customs Code, doesn't require any action or any legislative implementation on the side of the EU. Basically, they provide for the standard cooperation with a possibility to develop cooperation and further action in the future through an enabling clause that would enable the two parties to agree and to set up such cooperation in the Partnership Council. We have also a provision concerning cooperation in roll-on, roll-off traffic, which is an area of particular interest due to the traffic between the EU and the UK. And also we don't have and this is a negative element, but we don't have any mutual recognition of security standards because the United Kingdom didn't want to align with the EU legislation. The agreement also contains an annex providing for the mutual recognition of authorized economic operators, and this from the 1st of January, which has followed an examination of the EU customs and the authorized economic operators legislation, and which provide for the necessary safeguards in case there was divergence in the future. The protocol on mutual administrative assistance in customs matters provides for cooperation and assistance to ensure the proper application of customs provisions and to fight against fraud. We have also two specific provisions against fraud in the goods chapter that enable, in the worst of cases, for the suspension of preferences in cases of systematic lack of cooperation to fight against customs fraud. And also a provision to deal with errors in the management of tariff preferences. With respect to rules of origin, they are very much based on the EU already applied rules in agreements such as with Japan. My colleagues from DG Trade, Ignacio Rizaga, will elaborate on that. That provide only for bilateral EU-UK cumulation and contain the standard rules that appear in other agreements. With respect to the procedures, which is the area most directly concerned concerning customs, they provide for self-declaration of origin by the exporters and for verification procedures via cooperation between customs authorities. In order to mitigate the negative effects that have been derived from the fact that there was very little time from the publication of the agreement, 26th of December, and the entry into force, 1st of January, the Commission has adopted an implementing regulation introducing flexibility for exporters to be able to obtain the necessary documentation to certify the origin of the products. The agreement finally contains provisions on the customs enforcement of intellectual property rights, which are also standard similar to what we have in other agreements. With respect to the protocol on VAT, we have a protocol that provides for a mutual administrative assistance in value-added tax, and also for provisions for the recovery of indirect taxes, both value-added tax and excise duties, as well as custom duties. These protocol goes beyond any provisions that we have agreed in other agreements. So all in all, the proposals, the text of the agreement is very much based on the proposals made by the European Union. They preserve the European Union autonomy and the integrity of its customs legislation and therefore of the internal market, whilst at the same time providing for possible future development of cooperation in the future. Since there has been little time for business to adapt to the regulations and for customs to apply the new agreement, Digitax Sud, together with other Commission services, is providing guidance both to operators as well as to customs authorities to facilitate the application of the agreement. This is what I would like to say by way of introduction. Many thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I directly give the floor to the next speaker from the Commission, Mr. Ignacio Iruazaga, sorry for my bad pronunciation, from DG Trade.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks a lot. So I will take you through some of the elements that we have negotiated and agreed in trading goods and in general and on the TBT area in particular. I think maybe I will start by reiterating what you said at the beginning of the meeting, that this agreement, of course, is less than membership, and that we cannot expect and we should not expect that the result of this agreement leads to the same seamless trade that we enjoyed between the UK and the Union when the UK was a member of the Union beforehand. So we have to accept that the relationship is going to be different, and that there are going to be impacts on value chains, etc. Within that constraints, we have tried to fulfill our mandate with issued by the Council and the recommendations of the Parliament to secure as good as possible market access for goods with a level playing field and without conceding on anything that would have jeopardized the autonomy or integrity of the internal market. On trading goods, we have achieved a deal that covers no tariffs and no quotas, no duties and no quotas for bilateral trade, and that with rules of origin that basically correspond to the stable platform that the European Union, tables in all of its FTAs. And we table that stable platform, and the result is very close to that stable platform that will facilitate, we hope, the work of our exporters, because they will be exporting to the UK with rules that are familiar to them in other preferential agreements. And that includes some of other key features and rules of origin, like bilateral cumulation, as my colleague was explaining before. It is important to note that cumulation is unilateral. I mean, the UK wanted a very far-fetching diagonal accumulation with all parties with whom both of us would have an FTA that would have amounted to expire from trading goods. We have also incorporated some disciplines to the agreement that go beyond the disciplines of the WTO GATT. So we have ambitious commitments in areas like import and export licensing, on the prohibition of import and export monopolies, disciplines on repair goods or on remanufactured goods. And we have also secured a provision on cooperation on the recovery of cultural objects, as it was requested in the council mandate. Coming now to elements which are very relevant to the internal market in the technical barriers to trade chapter, I would like to highlight three particular elements. One is that the TBT chapter includes a definition of international standards that anchors the UK to the true international standardization system as we understand it in the Union. This will ensure that both sides, domestic product standards and technical regulations, will continue to be based on the same international references, and that will help our producers to operate in a close regulatory environment in the UK, given that our own harmonized standards supporting EU product legislation are largely based on the same international standards. So that is a very, very important provision from our point of view to make sure that there is an element of convergence in our frameworks, indirectly through the recognition of the same international standards. In the field of conformity assessment, we have achieved also an excellent and unprecedented result, which is that we preserve both in the UK and in the Union the use of self-declaration of conformity for the areas where self-declaration of conformity is applied on the 1st of January, i.e. on the first day of application of the new agreement. And that would allow our operators to continue exporting to the UK with limited red tape for low-risk products. Of course, the agreement foresees the possibility of introducing third-party conformity assessment if there are justified reasons for that, for the introduction of that requirement. We have also agreed in the area of market surveillance and product safety to a framework for cooperation and information exchange. And this framework will be implemented through arrangements for information sharing concerning the parties' respective market surveillance activities and measures, and that we will develop in the coming months. And finally, the TBT agreement contains some annexes that further elaborate on the rules, in particular in automotives, medicines, chemicals, organics, and wine, and those correspond largely to the platform that we have in other FTAs as well. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much. We move to the next speaker, that is Christoph Kiener from DG Trade on services.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. I'll start by saying simply that we're very satisfied with the outcome that we reached on services, investment, public procurement, as well as small and medium-sized enterprises. This is all largely responding or fully responding to the negotiating directives that we had received from the Council. And the text is also very, very largely based on the EU's initial proposal. While you may remember that in the beginning of the process, around March, the UK had initially tabled a text that was very significantly different from the EU text proposals. So from that perspective, it's very satisfactory. When it comes to substance, and I'll start with services and investment, we have an ambitious agreement that builds on existing multilateral and recent bilateral trade agreements entered into by the European Union. We have rules that are broadly comparable to those that we had in our agreement with Japan, but obviously, I need to underline that that does not amount or is not equivalent to the single market benefits. There are several big differences. Now, we even managed a bit like in the area of trading in goods to go a little bit beyond our usual practice, and in particular beyond the benchmark of our agreement with Japan. And so the text is in a few places modernized and clearer. Now, when we did all this, we made sure to fully preserve the EU's regulatory autonomy. Our traditional red lines are fully preserved. Public services are, of course, excluded. Audiovisual services, services provided in exercise of governmental authority. We have a wide prudential carve-out for financial stability. And of course, we made sure that the integrity of the single market would be respected. So this agreement, as I said, is far less beneficial than membership in the single market. There is no right to establishment or no right to the movement for natural person. There is no home country rule, no passporting for financial institutions, no grandfathering of single market conditions, despite a number of requests from the UK to this extent. For example, the UK also wanted a quasi-automatic recognition of professional qualifications, which we had to fight back, but we were successful in all of that. Turning to the specifics on investment liberalization, we have a very ambitious outcome. So we benefit from non-discrimination. We have ambitious provisions prohibiting performance requirements. In some areas, as I mentioned, our deal with the UK is better than that with Japan. We ensured the right to own UK flagged vessels, which are an entry point for a wide range of activities, including maritime transport or fisheries, of course. Turning to cross-border trade in services, we secured a forward-looking most favored nation clause. We also have a review clause to see whether in the future we would want to go beyond what we've achieved. But again, here we are fully in line with what we did with Japan. The one exception is that this MFN clause and the review clause do not apply to financial services. I'll come back to financial services later on. Turning to the schedules of commitments where the reservations are inscribed and which determines, so to speak, the level of liberalization. Here again, we based ourselves on the EU-Japan agreement, but there are a few areas where we do go beyond. I already mentioned the ownership of fishing vessels. So we ourselves accepted to restrain our own reservation to make clear that we would not discriminate on grounds of nationality, so that we would get a similar treatment from the United Kingdom. We added a few subsectors in the area of specialty air services like firefighting, spraying, or photographic services, which we had never committed. We have, however, made sure to exclude any services using drones for that matter. Railway services, we typically in the past had a full exclusion in previous FTAs, but here we agreed to take a non-discrimination commitment for the supply of railway freight transportation on an investment basis. We also bound existing rules on port services and ensured that any limitations would have to be non-discriminatory, if any. On telecommunication services, we pushed the boundaries also a little bit. We ensured that broadcasting transmission services were committed by both sides. However, I want to be clear that, of course, we made sure to exclude audiovisual services, so that carve-out is not jeopardized. Turning to the temporary entry and stay of services suppliers, this is, if you want, the fallback situation since the UK did not want to have any chapter on the mobility of natural persons. So we landed back in the traditional trade chapter on what we call Mode 4. Here as well, our objectives have been fully achieved. We have an outcome that is largely based on our initial proposal. But of course, this does not amount to the free movement of labor that we used to have in the single market. We cover the traditional categories of Mode 4 supply. We have procedural commitments on visas and for family members that are in line with the precedents in EU-Japan, for example. And for the first time, Mode 4 service suppliers will benefit from the coordination of social security regimes. Now, the result in that area is remarkable because you may know that in the past, the UK itself had been very prudent and was typically below par compared to other EU member states. For example, in our agreement with Japan, the EU-Japan agreement, the UK had very modest commitments on Mode 4, and we have now made up for that. We have obtained from the UK a reciprocal approach, so that is very good. Turning to some of the regulatory chapters that we cover, here as well, again, we're very, very satisfied, and we've managed to get the UK to agree to virtually all our proposals. We have provisions on telecommunication, financial delivery, maritime transport services, as well as for the first time, we have a regulatory chapter on legal services, which results in a clearer presentation of existing commitments. Now, very rapidly, because time flies, in addition to those sector-specific chapters, we have a horizontal section called domestic regulation, which we have in all our agreements. We've based ourselves on recent negotiations taking place in Geneva in the WTO, Joint Statement Initiative on Domestic Regulation, but we've managed to include a few top-ups. We have a framework for future recognition of professional qualifications. Here, as I said in the beginning, the UK wanted a quasi-automatic reconduction of the single market benefits, which we turned down. And we have our classical approach whereby professional bodies and authorities submit joint recommendations to the Partnership Council, which can develop, if need be, recommendations, or they can develop binding, arrangements on the recognition of professional qualifications. On delivery services, our traditional proposal was accepted in full. On telecommunication services, just to mention that we refused a UK request to maintain the benefit of the single market in the area of roaming. So the only thing we have is a best endeavor clause on cooperation on international mobile roaming, very much in line with what we had with Japan. We have commitments on open internet access as well, and this is a first in a trade agreement. We agreed that the provisions of telecommunication services would not be subject to any a priori approval or prior approval. On financial services, this is important because there's been quite a lot of misunderstanding. There is a chapter on financial services which may not be granting additional market access commitments compared to what we have in EU-Japan, despite the UK's insistence until the very last minute and at very high level that the EU should continue to maintain the possibility to supply services on cross-border portfolio management. So we turned this down. But nevertheless, our agreement provides significant market access opportunities when it comes to establishment of financial institutions, so investment into the EU, of course, always within the regulatory system and the supervision of EU regulators. That's quite clear. There is a section that foresees a future negotiation on a memorandum of understanding on future cooperation in financial services, which will remain separate from the legally binding commitments under the trade agreement. And obviously, discussions on equivalence will be also kept completely separate from the trade agreement itself, as equivalence decisions are unilateral decisions that we don't want to be, vis-à-vis which we don't want to be restrained or limited by any legally binding rules in a trade agreement.
Could you come slowly to an end?
Yes. We have ambitious provisions on maritime transport. As I said, new provisions on legal service. Let me just say a few words on public procurement, because I didn't say anything on this. This is the best ever public procurement agreement that we've achieved. All our objectives have been met. We have 4 pillars. We incorporated the GPA, the Government Procurement Agreement. We introduced additional and reciprocal market access for privately owned entities with monopoly rights, procuring entities in gas and heat networks, and some additional services. Third pillar on public procurement, we have a non-discrimination clause for EU-owned companies even below the threshold of the GPA, and finally, some additional public procurement standards that do, of course, not go as far as the single market. One word just about SMEs, because I know how important this is for the European Parliament. Here as well, our mandate, our objectives were fully achieved. We have our classical SME chapter, and in particular, provisions on information sharing with a dedicated website to facilitate SMEs access to information, a link to public procurement notices, a searchable database by tariff nomenclature, and the SME contact points, which will ensure that SMEs' needs are taken into account during the implementation of the agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It is interesting what you elaborate on the services, because there had been a lot of misunderstanding, especially I think in the British press, who said that services was excluded completely. But as you pointed out, it is absolutely not the case. So the last basically topic we want to discuss with the Commission now is the withdrawal agreement and the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland. Very, very important topic. Dear colleagues, please stick to the time. We have really a lot of speakers today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, honourable members. I'll say a few words about the withdrawal agreement and the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland. As you all know, this protocol, which entered into force on the 1st of February, clarifies inter alia that customs controls should be introduced for goods moving from Northern Ireland to Great Britain and vice versa. And at the same time, the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland protocol identified a number of issues that should be resolved through decisions of the Joint Committee. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. 3 decisions were taken with relevance to customs matters. These are: 1, the decision on union presence; 2, the decision on goods at no risk; 3, the decision to correct Annex 2. And in addition, the UK stated in a unilateral declaration how it would treat the movements of goods from Northern Ireland to Great Britain, commonly referred to under the notion of unfettered access. Overall, we reached good or satisfactory results in all areas, which I'm going to briefly present to you. The decision on goods at no risk essentially foresees which duty is payable for goods arriving in Northern Ireland from Great Britain or the rest of the world. It does do so by comparing the EU duties with the duties that would be due in the UK. This decision also introduces a so-called trusted trader regime that allows the imports of goods without duties to be paid if the importer can demonstrate that the goods will stay in Northern Ireland. In other words, that they will not reach the EU. For example, the sale of products in a supermarket in Belfast. The trusted trader must be a reliable trader with adequate controls over its supply chain. The decision on goods at no risk avoided that the UK tabled a legislative proposal allowing the UK to overrule and disregard the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol. The second decision concerns the correction of Annex 2, 8 legal acts which are essential from an internal market perspective were added to this annex, which means that these sets of legislation will be applied in Northern Ireland. From our DG Taxud perspective, the addition of Council Regulation 111 of 2005 on drug precursors and Regulation 2019-880 on the imports of cultural goods was of particular importance. For the movement of goods from Northern Ireland to the UK submitted a unilateral declaration that normal customs procedures apply for all important transactions. For example, the export of goods subject to prohibitions and restrictions based on international agreements. For all other goods, it was suggested that the information equivalent to customs data would be collected through other means. This solution was essential for the withdrawal of the internal market bill that the UK had tabled, and that would have allowed the UK to overrule the Northern Ireland Protocol. A key priority in our negotiations with the UK was the creation of a strong union presence in Northern Ireland that could monitor whether the UK authorities implement the protocol and the Union Customs Code correctly in Northern Ireland. Ultimately, that led to the adoption of a third decision of the Joint Committee, which contains the practical working arrangements for the union representatives working in Northern Ireland. The decision lays down in particular, 1, the modalities for requesting information from the Northern Irish authorities, such as the right to examine and, where necessary, copy documents or records in the possession of the authorities. 2, it ensures ongoing and continuous electronic access on a real-time basis to the key UK IT customs systems. And 3, it regulates the modalities for requesting control measures by the Northern Irish authorities. The exercise of the rights of the union representatives are not limited to the territory of Northern Ireland, but relates to any activities carried out by the United Kingdom authorities in the implementation of the protocol, irrespective of their location in the UK. This also, by the way, includes the verification of trusted traders. Currently, we have 6 Taxud colleagues in Northern Ireland, plus 1 colleague from Olaf, and there are also numerous colleagues from DG Santé who are looking particularly into the control of the sanitary and phytosanitary controls. Our colleagues in DG Taxud have already established very good contacts with the UK authorities. The same applies to the Santé colleagues. They have received provisional allocation of offices and started accompanying the UK colleagues during the verifications and controls. We have also issued a call for interest for member states so that they can in future send national experts to support the union presence. That is all I would like to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I have a last person on my list, that is Mr. Hannes Krämer from the UK Task Force. But this probably was it then? No, yeah.
No, just Madam Chair, there was a connection problem. No, actually, I don't have anything to add to what my colleague, Mr. Schnichels from DG Taxud, just said, but I stand, of course, ready to answer questions from the honourable member, in particular on the aspect implementation of the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your input, for this very informative insight. I'm sure the colleagues have a lot of questions and remarks. We go directly to the first round of questions from the coordinators. We then afterwards going to have a second round of colleagues. You have 2 minutes for your question, and then the Commission can answer for 3 minutes, and probably then the Commission can always decide who of you wants to take the floor and just basically switch on your microphone. That's probably the easiest. So basically, I start with the EPP, with Andreas Schwab.
Thank you so much, Chairman, and thank you so much also to the whole team that has been negotiating. I think you have done a marvelous job, and you have all the support of the European Parliament for the work that you have done. And obviously, that agreement is not a normal agreement. It is an association agreement with one of the biggest economies that is part of our trading system. And for that reason, we could not expect that that is a very easygoing agreement that comes out. But we are here, Chairwoman and colleagues, not now to make a nice statement about how life will be after Brexit. We are having to look on the facts that this agreement puts as a challenge. And I'm very happy to see that there are European Union colleagues in Belfast that will check the application of that duality of the agreement that the EU has taken with Northern Ireland at the one side, and on the other side that the EU has done with the UK. I think we should go, Chairwoman, to Belfast soon as a committee to check what these people can really do in detail, because that will be a key question for what we know so far. I wanted to start with a question that is a bit, because we have been speaking so much about fish, I wanted to start with the question, where is the beef? Because it seems to me, after having heard so many presentations, that lots of elements of this agreement, as Mr. Repasi has also pointed out in the hearing that you have organized, Anna, are still open. So we are discussing just about the basics, and the basics already show that there are really challenges. And therefore, I will not go too much into details. I would like to understand better how this duality of rules can be maintained and controlled by the European Union. And secondly, as we have been speaking about harmonized standards, this is the only question. Maybe I really add to the first question that is more of general nature. How could it be that for batteries, the UK has got a 6-year period of deviation from the principle of origin ruling? Because batteries will be a key concern for that committee soon. And if we know already there that the UK has for 6 years the possibility to deliver without sticking to the new rules, there is already a risk of distortion of markets. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Now the floor back to the Commission. Please just organize yourselves. Probably if you want to speak from the Commission side, you can raise your hand and then we see you in the system and then we can open your microphone.
Hello, I will take the points of Mr. Schwab. First, what is the beef? I like the expression. There is plenty of beef. I mean, this agreement, and is in terms of trade, is probably the most ambitious agreement we have ever concluded, and it is all there. I mean, we have zero tariffs, zero quotas. We have commitments on services that, as my colleague was saying, go beyond what we agreed with Japan. We have the best agreement we have ever concluded on government procurement, for instance. So just to give you some examples, we have on the technical barriers to trade area also the best agreement we have, I think, ever concluded within an FTA. So the beef is there already on the table and is already functioning as from the 1st of January. Now, when it comes to batteries, I think there is no derogation for the UK. I mean, we are looking at the preferential rules of origin for batteries. With the UK, is the first time in which we have hardened the rules for batteries. I mean, the rule that we have for origin of batteries in agreements like Japan, Mercosur, Mexico, Canada, any other country, were more relaxed than the rule that will apply for batteries coming from the UK at the end of a transitional period of 6 years. So we are actually hardening the rule as we have never done before. We are also hardening the rule for electric vehicles, where we are incorporating an additional requirement that we didn't have in other FTAs, which is that the battery should be originating in either the Union or the UK. So that is a hardening of the rules, both for batteries and electric vehicles. And to accompany that hardening, both for UK operators, but for our own operators, there is a transitional period of 6 years with two different phases built into the transition, both for electric vehicles and for batteries. But what we do see in the case of the UK on batteries and electric vehicles is actually a hardening of the rule that we have with other partners to accompany the strategy of the Union on the so-called, battery alliance strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now the next speaker is Christel Schaldemuse from the SD.
Thank you very much, Chair, and also thanks to all the people from the Commission in order to try to give us this comprehensive overview of the agreement. And like Andreas Schwab, I would like to say congratulations. You made a good job here. I'm kind of split, because on one side, we need really to establish that there are differences between being a member of EU and not being a member. But on the other hand, I'm also interested in knowing what will be the biggest differences for European citizens, consumers, trading online, or for our businesses trading with UK partners. Is it the time in the customs that will be problematic, or will there come a lot of, I know that there's no tariffs, but will there come fees for customs? I think that could be interesting to have an idea of what will be the difference for those trading and for the consumers. I am very happy about the standards, the standardization. That's extremely important. But I might yet be a bit afraid, or I would like you to tell more about the consumer protection and product safety aspects. Well, it's good that we have a level playing field on that, but how will we as a European Parliament be able to follow up on that, on the implementation of the rules, in order to make sure that products entering into EU from UK will still be safe? Thank you very much. I know it's complicated and there's a lot of things, but I hope that you will be able to answer me for my questions here. Thanks.
Thank you, Christel. The same procedure. I give the floor back to the Commission. You can just raise your hand and then we see whom we open the microphone.
Please press the speak button, sir.
Yep. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the question, Ms. Schaldemose. I think you asked in the first place what will change for the traders, and I think you're absolutely right. What will change for people moving goods from the UK from Great Britain to the EU will be, on the one hand, they have to factor in the customs procedures which are necessary. I'll come back to that. And on the other hand, they might have to pay tariffs, because there was probably a bit of a misunderstanding. Tariffs are not due for goods originating out of UK goods, but if there is a trader who buys goods from China based in the UK and then tries to channel them through the EU via the UK, of course, tariffs for these Chinese goods will still have to be paid. I think that is also very important to ensure a level playing field for our traders. And yes, there will be customs procedures, and the role of customs has changed over the last years. It's also since quite some time already. It's no longer only collecting duties. It's also to make sure, together with the specialized authorities, that the product standards are respected. So that's the non-fiscal role of customs authorities. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I see Ignacio raising his hand, so probably you can speak next, and especially probably also target the question on this online trade that Mrs. Schaldemose still had.
Yes, to complement on a couple of points to what my colleague said, I think there are indeed, in terms of safety of products, the same rules as the union rules will apply entirely as for products coming from any other territory outside the union. So if the products exported from the UK will have to meet our rules, and where they have to be, where the compliance with our rules have to be certified, that will have to be certified in the union. And then, as my colleague from Digitaxo was saying, there are, of course, all the UK is a third country now, so the seamless trade that we got in the internal market is gone, and then they will have to all customs procedure will have to apply whenever possible in the agreement. We have tried to introduce modern rules to minimize the impact of those border controls. Madame Schaldemose was mentioning in her intervention, for instance, customs fees. And then, for instance, we have a provision on customs fees that says that customs fees are only allowed if they correspond to a specific service that is being rendered at customs. And in those cases, the fees will have to be transparent and proportional to the actual cost of the service that has been rendered. So we have introduced disciplines that would facilitate the trade, but within the constraints of the model that has been chosen, which is an FTA, and that has natural constraints, including rules of origin, as my colleague from the Taxud just said.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Sandro Gossi from Renew.
Thank you, Chair. This agreement provides for a high level of market access, and this, as is stated, requires a clear and credible rules to guarantee fair and open competition. I would like to understand from the Commission representative how difficult in reality it will be to identify a real breach from UK side of this principle, and how difficult it will be to adopt the necessary measure against UK in case of real breach. I mean, how the proposed dispute resolution mechanism will really work, and what are the real tools at our disposal should the UK unilaterally diverge from the agreed standard. That's the first question, Chair. The second is another objective of the agreement, which is to facilitate e-commerce. And the agreement calls also on the need to address the existing unjustified barriers. I mean, to what extent, according to you, the agreement ensures a level playing field in the digital sector as such? And how do you see, on one side, the development, the regulatory development in the EU with the DSA, DMA, and possibly a tax divergence, and how this could impact on the European competitiveness in the sector? The third point is mutual recognition of certain professional qualifications, how the process will be really structured, how can you be sure that it will work and that it will not undermine or circumvent the Professional Qualification Directive? And last point, last but not least, Andreas Schwab was talking about fish and beef. I would say fish and beef and chips. Some of these are geographically protected, but for the future chips, which can be new European geographic indications, there is no protection. I mean, to me, it's a matter of concern. How do you plan to address this issue of future European geographical indications? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. It will be probably very hard to answer these important questions in 3 minutes, but we can try. So please raise your hand from the Commission, whoever wants to speak first. No one. Too difficult, the questions. Yeah, Christoph, please.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'll try to take the questions on e-commerce and on mutual recognition. Perhaps first on mutual recognition, how will it work? And as I very briefly mentioned, we had to turn down a request from the UK to maintain the existing system of horizontal recognition of professional qualification, and we're falling back into our classical free trade agreement model for this issue, whereby professional associations from the two entities, so the EU and the UK in that particular case, for example, architects and the Association of Architects, sends a joint recommendation to the Partnership Council, so the EU and the UK, meeting in the context of this agreement, asking to develop a set of legally binding arrangements on the recognition of professional qualification. On that basis, the two parties may agree to initiate negotiations in order to develop and adopt such rules. Needless to say that this is much below par vis-à-vis the existing system. For the time being, we do have this kind of arrangement in a number of our trade agreements. We are currently hoping to finalize one such arrangement for architects with Canada, but this is basically it. So it shows how much of an impact Brexit will have for professions that were previously being recognized in the EU and in the UK, of course. On e-commerce, what are the unjustified barriers that we're trying to address there? Well, an important element is that for the first time in this deal, we managed to agree on a provision prohibiting the introduction of data localization requirements. And this is obviously fully in line with the digital agenda, the digital strategy of the European Union, while at the same time making sure that the EU would retain all the necessary policy space to ensure the fundamental right to privacy and the protection of personal data under the GDPR. Now, in addition to that, we have a big digital trade chapter, which, for example, ensures that there can be no customs duties on electronic transmission, no principle of prior authorization. We allow contracts by electronic means. We prohibit unauthorized source code disclosures, but we leave policy space for algorithms that are linked to artificial intelligence. We have provisions on electronic signature, which of course are below par compared to the single market. We have provisions on the protection of consumers. We have provisions protecting us citizens against spam. And we provide for a cooperation mechanism for all those issues in the future. I'll perhaps leave my colleagues to discuss the more legal part of the question.
The problem is you run already over time. I suggest that the open questions on level playing field very important, and also on the geographical indications probably we can answer in the next round or in the next rounds. And now I'll give the floor to Virginie Géron from ID.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Ben, ça tombe bien parce...
Well, thank you very much, Chair. I've got more comments rather than technical questions. I'd like to thank the Commission's team for the very enriching presentations. I think the Brexit deal will be one of the major successes of this parliamentary term. I'm afraid we're having connection problems on the connection. Now, the United Kingdom, along with Switzerland, Norway, Iceland and Greenland, Monaco, Liechtenstein, among the richest countries, where the EU is going to get Albania and Kosovo. Brexit is going to give rise to a lot of questions. Well, why? I'm afraid we're having trouble with the connection. There's a lot of interference. Now, for France, the negotiations are now concluded. So the Commission's experts are now going to be recycled. They're going to be sent off to different areas of competence. And they've got this a considerable amount of experience. Well, we've got other issues now, like recycling nuclear reactors and aircraft carriers and things. So we see what this agreement brings for us, and we hope that it's rapidly ratified.
I suggest that by answering this question from Madame Géron, we can probably also take up the questions from the last time that were left over on level playing field on geographical indications. And in total, 3 minutes, dear Commission. Okay, Antonio, please.
Okay, I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you, but not see you.
I'll try to see if. Okay.
If there's no camera, we can't do translation. So if you...
Yeah, no, I'm trying to get
now we
my
can
camera
see you.
on. Okay. All right. So I'll respond to the question on level playing field, which was a particularly important topic in the negotiation. Also, at the very firm request of the European Parliament, it was clear that the whole economic partnership had to be underpinned by rules ensuring a level playing field, particularly important given the degree of integration of the UK with the Union as a result of their 47 years of membership. And we have achieved that so that both parties will, in the future, commit to and respect a common set of rules in order to ensure that fair competition between the parties is respected. I think there was a particular interest. There's a question of subsidies, but given the short time available, I will focus on non-regression. When it comes to non-regression, the agreement ensures that the current high standards applicable in the areas of labour, social standards, environment and climate cannot be lowered in a manner that would affect trade and or investment between the parties. And in order to achieve that, there is a strong, or rather several strong mechanisms to ensure that those commitments are properly enforced. So this non-regression commitment, first of all, there are effective domestic enforcement provisions so that we ensure that in the different areas there is a prohibition to reduce the levels of protection. For example, if you take labor or social matters, the agreement refers to labor inspections, to administrative and judicial proceedings, to allow public authorities and individuals to bring actions against violations of labor law, social standards. So we have made sure that we had cover from that perspective. And then there is also a mechanism of dispute resolution for the commitments on non-regression and domestic enforcement under the agreement, which builds on the traditional way we have applied dispute settlement in our FTAs, and where there's failure to comply with the findings of a dispute settlement panel, an arbitration body, this can lead to sanctions, including the suspension of trade commitments. And also, finally, a possibility to apply unilateral measures that can be adopted if over time the parties significantly diverge in these non-regression areas in a manner that materially impacts trade or investment between the parties. So all in all, what we have achieved is an unprecedented mechanism that will protect the Union in these non-regression areas.
Thank you so much. Your time is over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next for the Greens is actually me, but I can directly basically jump on what you had been saying. I have two questions or two remarks, and one is indeed on the level playing field, because I believe that the level playing field mechanism is the most important tool in order to preserve the integrity of the single market. And this was always our demand, as you said, from the European Parliament side. I first want to congratulate the Commission that you introduced sanctionable environmental and social standards in a trade agreement, because in other trade agreements we are very much fighting for that and often get told by the Commission that it's not possible. It's very good to see now that it is possible to integrate it in a free trade agreement, and I think that should be a standard for all the agreements, the trade agreements we are doing in the future. But I have a question. Like, to my reading, this mechanism is very difficult to invoke, because you have to prove that you have significant influence on trade, or that there's really trade distortions. And I wonder how you at the end want to define that, because to my understanding, it's not enough if, for example, the UK lowers their environmental standards. You have to prove that this has a negative impact on trade, and how this can really look in the future is not clear to me. And I also think it is very important that we, as the European Parliament, can ask the Commission to start the mechanism, because I think if we only basically rely on the Commission itself, it is not enough. I think we as the European Parliament should have the right to do so. The second question I have, or remark that I have, is indeed on the democratic oversight of the agreement. I think very, very important for all parliamentarians. You mentioned that the Partnership Council will have far-ranging rights, for example, to change the agreement, to change the annexes, to also change the rules, for example, for professional qualifications, but without any parliamentary oversight. So, to my belief, when the agreement is changed, the Parliament would need to give its consent, and so far this is not foreseen in the structure. There's only this very, I would say, toothless parliamentary assembly planned, but nothing else. So could the Commission be a little bit more clear on that? Thank you. Antonio, please.
Okay, I will try to do quickly, because then Hannes Krammer will take the institutional question. So briefly on level playing field, we think that the mechanisms that have been established allow for effective enforcement. They have been modelled on the tools that we have used in FTAs. Not that in FTAs we have used them a lot, but those have in their turn been modelled on the WTO dispute settlement mechanism, which has been essentially the inspiration for the dispute settlement mechanism, the general one that applies as well when it comes to the non-regression commitments. We have on top, as I said, the unilateral remedial measures, which indeed, require a certain degree of proof. We will need to prove, for example, when it comes to unilateral remedial measures, that there is a significant negative effect on trade or investment between the EU and the UK. But this is natural, because of course what we are interested in is in the stability of the economic relationship. So we have to have good reasons before we resort to these mechanisms. Given the short time available, perhaps I would leave it there so that Hannes has time to respond on the institutional aspects. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Hannes now.
Yes, many thanks, Madam Chair, honourable members. Now, as regards the role on the involvement of the Parliament, basically, also here this disagreement is or follows the model of existing agreements. Of course, it is a far-reaching agreement in that it covers a very big range of issues, but more precisely, as regards amendments, there are limited powers for the Partnership Council to amend the agreement, but we have been very careful to make sure that these powers are limited to non-essential parts of the agreement, precisely in order to preserve the role of the European Parliament, because, as you know, for amendments done within the Partnership Council, EU internally, there would only be a decision of the Council required and no involvement of the Parliament. So these are very technical, narrowly circumscribed instances where amendments are possible without involvement of the European Parliament. Everything which goes beyond would require a full-fledged amendment of the agreement, and that would, of course, then trigger again the requirement for consent of the European Parliament. Then the Parliament, of course, will be fully informed by the Commission of any development relating to the implementation of the agreement. And that would also concern, for instance, the triggering of the dispute resolution mechanism by the Union, and of course it is under the parliamentary responsibility of the Commission. The Parliament could always ask the Commission to take action. But again, here this is basically in line with what is done in all trade and association agreements the Union has concluded so far. Many thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. The next one on my list is Eugen Jurisa from the ECR.
Please push the speak button, sir. Push the button once.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear and see you.
Okay, so it's too far from Brussels, Slovakia. I have two questions for our guests. We can already see the problems and delays in the free movement of goods and at the EU UK border. And businesses and consumers can expect hard weeks ahead to accustom to the new system of operating. Can our guests explain how they use their authority to make the transition as bearable as possible for the businesses and free trade of goods? Second question relates to mutual cooperation. For a couple of times we heard today that the agreement is indeed very good. However, there is a risk that EU and UK regulations, while seeking similar goals, might soon differ in their wording that would create unnecessary burden for the trade and red tape for businesses and loss for consumer welfare. Can you give us some examples of measurable outcomes of the agreement in the near future? For example, would you agree that there is a risk that the number of exchange of workers in regulated professions, trade and in goods or capital flows might soon decrease even if we have a good agreement? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So please raise your hand if you want to speak from the Commission side. Ignacio, please, and probably next time you can be a little bit faster that we don't lose so much time.
Sorry, Madam Chair. So very quickly, I think there is, just to say, to respond to Mr. Jurczyka, is that there is not such a thing as free movement of goods now with the UK. We have a free trade agreement, which is very different. I mean, the time, and we have to I think we have to accept that fact. The free movement of goods, free movement of labor, free movement of capital is simply gone the way we have understood it within the internal market, and that is the result of Brexit. And we cannot remedy that through an FTA. We can eliminate the application of tariffs for originating products. We can do things to try to smooth traffic at the border, as we have done in the agreement, but we cannot avoid having controls of whether technical regulations are being complied with, because our technical regulations do no longer apply in the UK. We no longer have the ability to control things in the UK. We no longer have the jurisdiction of the Court of Justice applying in the UK, etc. So there will be controls. There is no free movement of goods. There is no free movement of labour any longer, and that is a fact we have to accept. That we cannot set ourselves as the benchmark the internal market, because the internal market is unattainable through an FTA. It has taken us within the Union decades to iron out barriers to the free movement of goods, to the free movement of labor. There are still, here and there imperfections. We keep on working to iron out those imperfections, but we will not achieve that through the FTA, and therefore we think that a measurement of success based on the degree of departure from the standards of the internal market is not the adequate measurement of success for this agreement. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And now for 1 minute, Dominique, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can only reiterate what Ignacio just explained. We have explored with the customs authorities the flexibilities that exist, and they have very well prepared, we can say, from the European side. They have introduced procedures that actually allow a rather smooth clearing of the goods, but at the same time, the UK is a third country now, and I think our citizens would not accept if there are distortions of competitions because of the goods arriving from the UK, or if there are non-compliant goods arriving via the UK. That means when you are a third country, there are controls on product safety, product compliance, on duties to be paid, etc., etc. That is the result of Brexit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The last speaker from coordinator side is Martin Schirdewan from GUE, please.
Ja, guten Tag und vielen Dank, Frau Vorsitzende. Ich würde gerne...
Good afternoon and thank you very much, Madam Chair. I've just got a comment to make. It's of course a shame that this has already come into force, and it's only now that we're able to look at the parliamentary scrutiny of this. I think that we really need to think about how this can be improved in the future. And I think the comment that you made as a Green MEP when you were talking about the Partnership Council and how we as a Parliament should have greater influence on the future executive, I think that's very important, as that's lacking at the moment. The Partnership Council, what I'd like to say to the Commission, that needs to be greatly improved. And another comment that the colleague from the Conservatives said about the EU office in Belfast and the interest that they would have and the possibility of going there to see how not just the withdrawal agreement, but the TCA is working. I think that it would be very useful. I very much support the idea of us as a committee going there to see how it's all working. But I have a question on the all-island economy, where this, I think, will be really the key point to see whether the TCA is actually working. We've got the withdrawal agreement in the Irish Protocol, and how that all works with avoiding issues, economic issues on the Irish island. And I think that the freedom for services and workers, service providers, well, they all need this. And of course, this is very much linked to the upholding of people, the rights of people, environment. And I think that we need to think about that. That's the first point. And then the second on the all-island economy and goods, production chains, supply chains, not just in the north, but for goods that are produced in the south, and how it's going to be very difficult to make it clear exactly what the origin is, and that's going to have an effect on the relations with third states, but also imports and exports into and out of the EU. So I'm wondering about how that is working at the moment with the implementation, and whether you have any further information on that point. Thank you very much.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Thank you very much indeed. A trip to Northern Ireland, I think that's something that we can most certainly do after Corona is over and done with.
Floor from the Commission side. Dominic, please.
Thank you very much. Just to first clarify, if there is a conflict between the Trade and Cooperation Agreement and the protocol takes precedence. So there is not really sort of an ambiguity of which kind of rules would apply. When it comes to the question is there now a movement possible between Northern Ireland and Ireland for goods and persons? And the answer is yes. I think that the idea was clause of the protocol to give to give the peace process, to continue with the key peace process, to make sure that the Good Friday Agreement can be implemented, and that meant no controls across the borders, and that is happening. We have currently no reliable statistics. That is also one of the things that our reliable statistics on the Northern Irish economy, because it was always part of the UK economy, but that's of course also a task of the Union presence to really understand better the trade and business side in Northern Ireland, and so they will certainly look into that. But at the moment, we don't have reliable statistics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move now to the second round of questions and remarks. And because we are a little bit running short of time, I would suggest to take always 2 questions at the same time and then the answer. And also now I have to remind you, you have a little bit less time. So 1 minute strict for your question and 2 minutes answer by the Commission. The next colleague is Antonius Manders from EPP, please.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for all the answers we get, because there are a lot of difficulties and concerns. I want to elaborate a little bit and have a question, and it's a follow-up of your question, Chair. Is it possible, or is there a sort of a fuse when there is a distortion of breaching or not complying the conditions in the deal? Because as a former court attorney, I know that even if you have right, it's very difficult to get your right from the court, and if it takes years, then it might be problematic because the UK doesn't recognize anymore the ECG. And it might be a good idea that the European Parliament, if they vote in a majority to use the fuse, like an electric fuse, that then the measures or the regulation mechanism already are installed in special cases, so that we have punitive measures immediately, and then we find out who's right or not. Because if we have to wait for this arbitration agency, it might take too long. And at the end, I think, and that's a second question,
you're running over time.
The UK to suffer because of this this divorce? Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear colleagues. Please stick to the time. Now, Evelyn Gebhardt.
Ja, danke schön, Frau Vorsitzende. Ich werde es versuchen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. And I will try to be brief. I'm interested in the subject of consumer protection in the European Union and the internal market. Now, the case is as follows. Currently, the automatic dynamism of EU rights will no longer exist, and that basically means that if we want to have improvements in the rules and the rights that European citizens enjoy, then this won't not automatically be passed on. That's what I've understood anyway. I think I've understood that. Now, if there is an imbalance, there should be a mechanism. That's what I've understood, to make sure that we can recover the balance. Now, how will that be done? What are the criteria that will be used to shape this? Who actually decided? Who will decide that this imbalance exists? And I mean, these are sorts of things that it's not easy to find out. So I'd like to understand how that will work. How will this actually be done? How will this be formed? This question links into my question as well, actually. So thank you very much for that.
Mission for 2.5 minutes. Hannes, please.
Yes, many thanks, Madam Chair. Now, the first question is basically about the enforcement of the obligations under the agreement. Here we have a very robust enforcement mechanism through dispute settlement by an independent arbitration tribunal. to which basically or nearly all the obligations are subject. There are some modulations, and time is lacking to go into all these details, but basically all of the economic partnership is subject to the dispute resolution mechanism, which can be triggered by either party which considers that the other party is in breach. The procedure is very speedy. The arbitration tribunal is to deliver its ruling normally within 130 days after the establishment of the arbitration tribunal. In urgent cases, and many aspects of the economic partnership would qualify for that, it is half the time, so 65 days. As to the remedial action, there are two areas, namely state aid and fisheries, where the parties can take immediately remedial action even before seizing the arbitration tribunal. But that is not the normal case, because both parties thought it would be better that really we have the independent arbitration tribunal establishing the breach before then sanctions can be taken. The last question, I think Madame Gebhardt alluded to the rebalancing mechanism. So here, this is for the party which considers that there is an imbalance which has been created to take the rebalancing mechanism in reply to safeguard mechanisms taken by the other parties, but the proportionality of any such measures is again subject to review by an arbitration tribunal. Many thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I give the floor now to my colleague Marion Walzmann from EPP.
Ich glaube, damit bin ich gemeint. I think you mean me, do you? Well, I also believe that this trade and cooperation agreement means that the United Kingdom, even after it's left the EU, that should not be able to have access to the internal market on a level playing field. I mean, I think that has to be ended once and for all. Now, by leaving not just the customs union, but the agreement means that we have to look at duties and customs, and I think that what's happening in London, well, it's something that's being looked at very carefully, not just from London, but also in Norway, etc. as well. Now, my question, thank you very much for the answers on these points, and I know that they are quite complex, and I've got a follow-up question. With the cross-border exchange of unsafe products, how will that be done, and how will there be observation carried out by the member states and the United Kingdom after the withdrawal? How can that be guaranteed? And we also need to think about the cooperation on from the customs authorities with the market supervisory authorities, and how that will actually work. Who will control that? And thank you once again for answering the questions, but also thank you very much to the negotiation team as well, because they've done a great job. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's important to underline that.
The floor back. No, wait. I would first take another colleague so that we can answer a little bit more speedy. It is Morten Lokkegaard from the Renew.
Yes, hello, and you're able to hear me. I'll just start by saying that unfortunately I haven't been able to participate in the whole meeting, so I'm running the risk of repeating some of the questions that might came up earlier. So I will have to have your forgiveness for doing that. Of course, first of all, it's nice to have a deal, although it's not as ambitious as we could have hoped for. I deeply regret the UK decision not to participate in the Erasmus Plus program. So my first question would be, how does the Commission see its role in this particular question? Are we looking at some particular initiatives in order to make up for this error? My next question is about fisheries. Of course, there's a lot of concern out there on how to deal with this, especially after we're running out of quotas in the late 20s or around 2030. So my next question will be for the Commission to mitigate the insecurity and ensure stability after 2030 when it comes to this.
Thank you so much. The connection was not so good, but I hope the Commission could hear you. Who wants to answer? Please raise your hand. Ignacio, please.
I didn't actually pick up the question. Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't actually pick up the question on fisheries because of the connection on the control of unsafe products will be the same as with any other third country. I mean, the UK products, the UK or products coming from the UK are products which are not controlled through the mechanisms of the internal market, and therefore they will be subject to the same controls as products from any other third country when it comes to safety, and in general when it comes to compliance with technical regulations in the Union or sanitary and phytosanitary regulations if it's our foodstuffs. On the question of market surveillance, I think we have market surveillance in the Union will continue operating the same way as it does now. We have foreseen in the TBT chapter cooperation with the UK when it comes to market surveillance, and then we have also foreseen the possibility of exchanging data on dangerous products, and we are now going to be working on the technical mechanisms for that exchange of data on products that are risky for consumers.
Thank you so much. As you couldn't hear Mr. Lockegaard's question, we could try it again. Morten, you can probably quickly summarize your question if the connection is better now.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Very briefly, two questions. One concerning the Erasmus Plus program. I deeply regret the UK decision, and my question is as follows: How does the Commission cope with this error? What is to be done now in order to secure that the students can go forth and back from the continent and vice versa, in order to actually participate in some of the very good education possibilities that you normally would have in the UK? And the second question is about fisheries. There's a lot of concern out there, of course, since we now have a new deal, which is, of course, not as good as we can get in the best of all worlds. So my question would be, when the quotas we leave the 5.5 years, and what should be done then, and how would the Commission mitigate what to do and to mitigate the insecurity and ensure stability after 2030?
Okay, thank you so much. Now back to the Commission for these very two short questions. Antonio, please.
Please push the speak button.
Okay, sorry for that. Erasmus, which the honourable member termed as an error by the UK. Well, indeed, this was an offer that the Union had made. And as you know, the Erasmus programme is open to participation of third countries, but they have to participate in accordance with the conditions set out in the Basic Act that establishes the programme. The UK had requested some form of participation, partial participation, but this is not foreseen. And then the UK simply decided that it didn't want to participate in Erasmus, and has announced that it would set up its own competing or alternative program. So in a way, that's something perhaps that the UK would have wanted to do, something else, but that would be in parallel or replace Erasmus. I don't think we have any plans to change Erasmus, because Erasmus is a program that covers much more than the UK, and for that reason, while we regret this, we will continue with Erasmus. I think there was yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, if in the future the UK reconsiders, of course, we will be open to, again, including the UK in accordance with the applicable conditions. There was a question regarding fish, on fish. Indeed, I mean, after 5.5 years, what we will have is annual negotiations that will relate to the question of access to UK waters and to the conditions in which such access could happen. But we have included in the agreement sufficient safeguards to ensure that we can, if such annual negotiations result in essentially our fishermen being excluded from UK waters, take measures, including by imposing tariffs, for example, on fisheries products. We can also use the horizontal safeguard clause,
okay, can you come
provided
to an end?
the relevant conditions are met, so that we hope this provides sufficient incentive for those annual negotiations to succeed, and to and for our vessels and fishermen to continue having access.
Thank you. Now, Alessandra Basso from ID.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon. The exit of the United Kingdom from the EU is being presented as a kind of reciprocal success, and there's a need for a lot of mediation between the parties. For Italy, the negotiations are particularly important because of the important trade surplus that my country has with regard to the UK. In 2019, Italy had 9.7 billion of imports, but exported 19 billion pounds worth of exports to the UK, particularly in fashion and the agri-food sector. The future trade pact could lead to Italian losses of about 40% of this trade. On Dutch TV recently, a video was shown with the Dutch customs staff confiscating ham and cheese sandwiches that British lorry drivers had taken with them. They considered these to be illegal imports, even though they were obviously destined for immediate consumption. Article 41 of the agreement excludes from the trade agreement animal products, including Italian salami and cheeses, Parma ham, Parmesan cheese.
Over by a lot, by double almost. Sorry. You only have 1 minute, and we had 1 minute 40. Thank you so much. So for the Greens, none of my colleagues is available. So it is me again with a very brief follow-up question on the level playing field. Just to be very concrete, if, for example, the UK decreases its CO2 prices, or if the EU increases their CO2 prices, which is, of course, which has a huge impact on fair competition and on the level playing field, will then the Commission trigger the mechanism, and also will this hold in front of an arbitration panel? So can you just tell me one concrete example, what will happen when the UK really derives from the level playing field provisions? What will exactly then happen? Thank you so much. Who wants to speak from the Commission? Just raise your hand. Ignacio.
Yes, thank you. Maybe I can quickly take the question of concerning the trade between the question of Madame Basso on the trade between the Union and the UK. I think Italy has a surplus with the UK, and the Union as a whole has a surplus with the UK. And within the parameters of an FTA, let's remember that that was not our choice. I think Brexit was not our choice. I think within the parameters that we have an FTA which is extremely ambitious. We have zero tariff, zero quotas on originating products of the two parties. That is the most ambitious agreement when it comes to tariffs and quotas that we have ever had. And that covers, and I think there may be a misunderstanding there, that covers all products, not only industrial products. I mean, all agricultural products, including the products that were mentioned by Madame Basso, are covered by the trade agreement, and all products, provided of course they are originating at something like Parma ham, would be originating, good benefit of zero tariffs and zero quotas. Antonio will take the question on the LPF.
Antonio, please.
Push the speak button.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Climate, as I indicated in an earlier response, is one of the areas covered by the non-regression commitments. In addition to that, and I think that is specific and important in the area of climate, for the first time we have included this aspect, the Paris Agreement on climate, as one of the essential elements of the partnership, which means that if there is a violation of this essential element by one party, the other party has a particularly strong capacity to react by exercising the right to terminate or suspend all or parts of the agreement. So, I mean, that shows how important climate has been in these negotiations, as it has been put at the same level as other essential elements such as democracy, human rights, or the rule of law. Beyond that, the two parties, the EU and the UK, have reaffirmed their ambition with regard to climate neutrality and have included, as I said, carbon pricing and non-regression as part of the agreement, so that the current level of climate protection in both sides will continue to be upheld, meaning the level of protection existing at the end of the transition period. The UK also committed to implementing a system of carbon pricing as of the 1st of January, and maybe developing that in the coming months. As I explained earlier, in its main features, the way non-regression commitments are implemented are through first effective domestic enforcement, but then also through dispute resolution under the agreement, plus the possibility to apply unilateral rebalancing measures between the parties. So this is the main components of what can be done in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, Alex Saliba, please, from SND.
So thanks, Chair. First of all, thanks for the Commission for being with us today to answer our questions. First of all, I believe that the EU must be able to act decisively and quickly to make sure that its members, our consumers, our citizens, our SMEs are not impacted negatively and avoid the risk of fiscal, social, and also environmental dumping. I want to focus my question on roaming fees. The agreement is not specifically ensuring that roaming fees will not come back. So my question is, would this mean that every operator now can decide if they will be introducing roaming fees again with the UK? My second question is on digital policies. And here I have to say that there are many outstanding issues. However, I want to find out how data transfers between two parties will be regulated and also between the UK and third parties. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for sticking perfectly to the time. Now Tomislav Sokol from EPP.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I would like to thank the representatives of the Commission for being with us today. My general point is that the UK cannot benefit from the benefits of EU membership without respecting the obligations that members have. So this is definitely a message that we have to send, and it cannot use this possibility to act as a backdoor for trade with third countries and for products from third countries to enter the EU. Concrete questions. So first about medicines. European Union imports around 13% of its medicines from the UK. So since UK becomes a third country and these medicines will have to respect all the regulatory standards of the EU, do you expect any shortages of medicines in the short term? First question. Second question, the treaty prohibits import restrictions, but it doesn't mention measures having equivalent effect. So my question is, what about measures having equivalent effect to import restrictions, because they can also have big effect on trade? How will this be implemented in practice? Third question, there is a lot of provisions about social security coordination which more or less follow the existing rules of the coordination regulation 883 from 2004. My question is about temporary stay and healthcare. So currently European health insurance card is used. According to the treaty, will European health insurance card could be used for EU citizens in the UK, and what kind of certificate will UK citizens be able to use in the European Union?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're way over time. Thank you. So now back to the Commission. Was several questions? Okay, Christoph.
I will briefly respond to Mr. Agius Liba on roaming fees, if I may. The question was whether every operator was now free to introduce roaming fees, and the answer is yes, indeed. The impossibility to do that is a benefit of the single market, and the UK is out, so companies can introduce roaming fees. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, Dominique.
Yeah, thank you very much. On medicines, of course, you can never exclude everything with absolute certainty, but for the time being, it seems like the import of medicines is going on well. It was the biggest product imported into the EU from the UK in the first week following Brexit. We just analyzed that in the last days. Overall, we think that the pharma companies are often big companies which are probably a little bit better prepared for the Brexit. But of course, it means that they will have to go through customs and health controls. That is unavoidable. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for being concise. I now take the next questions. First of all is Deirdre Clune from EPP, please.
Yes, hello, and thank you to the presenters. And first thing I'd like to say is I'm so glad that we do have a deal. It's going to take time to go through it, but it's so important that we have a deal rather than no deal at all. So welcome that completely and thank all those involved. I'd like to focus just a little bit on the withdrawal agreement, not the withdrawal agreement, the Northern Ireland Protocol. And it is complicated, and there are images and in our screens and reports in newspapers about empty shelves in Northern Ireland and criticisms that the deal isn't really suited to just-in-time goods, and that be food for supermarket shelves. Could you somebody comment on that, please? And also on the issue of food that's just food products just destined for Northern Ireland, not for the Republic of Ireland. How are those products going to be identified, how is that provision to be policed or inspected? Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next one is Svetlina Penkova for Renew. For S&D.
Hello. Is the connection good?
Hello, yes.
Perfect, thank you. First of all, thank you. Thanks for the Commission for being here and answering our questions. My question is on the topic of trade, of course, as it has been discussed many times already. So the remark I want to make in the beginning is the UK has traditionally been the gateway for foreign goods to the EU. Currently, many traders who are outside of the EU have no knowledge in regards to the new regulations, and the goods that enter the UK might not be able afterwards to proceed to the EU due to the lack of information or the proper documentation, or vice versa. My question is there any planned regulatory framework that we can actually provide some additional support or information to avoid a shortage of certain goods on our market? Thank you.
Thank you so much. The last speaker for today is Svenja Hahn from Renew.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for joining us today and bringing more clarity into the facts of the Brexit deal. I came from the northern German city of Hamburg, which is a large port city, and my city, like many other port cities, are in the process of adapting to the change of trade with the UK. And I would like to know what measures the Commission has planned to ensure that custom procedures, especially in ports, are going as smooth as possible. So my questions are, how has the Commission prepared the Member States and regions, but especially ports, for the custom procedures that are required with the Brexit deal? And how exactly does the guidance for custom authorities and traders that you mentioned work? And how is the Brexit deal affecting the European ports? And last, is there financial support in place or planned for the member state and regions to help them adjust their custom procedures, especially in ports? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Svenja. Now we get back to the Commission, and I want to ask you, you could, of course, answer to these questions, but also include your final remarks. So if you want to raise your hand. So otherwise I have to, yeah, okay. Ignacio, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
So we start with Dominique, I propose, and then get back to Ignacio later. So Dominique, please.
Good. Thanks a lot. Yeah, we have also read the reports about the shortages in Northern Ireland in the supermarkets. And first of all, Brexit doesn't come as a surprise. I think we all knew it would come, and we all knew that the 1st of January was the end of the transition period. And I have to say that many traders have actually well prepared for it, and they have actually been able to ensure customs procedures, respect of customs procedures. How will the trusted trader regime work? I think that was the question. Essentially, the supermarket that actually wants to import from Great Britain into Northern Ireland would have to have a complete control over its supply chain. And if they can do that, then they can import with customs procedures, but without any duties to be paid. But there would be it has to be a trusted trader, no criminal offences, and they have to be able to say where the goods that they imported were actually sold, and they have to be sold in Northern Ireland. Then there was also a question on the ports. Well, first of all, we have visited a couple of ports before. Many of the ports are already importing goods from third countries, so for them, sort of having goods from a third country arriving there is nothing really new. They just have now more goods. I think there was one big exception, and that was the harbour of the port of Calais, where there were no goods from third countries arriving. What we have done for all the customs authorities, we have provided various trainings. We have also issued guidance documents, and there is also financial support possible. There is in the recovery fund, for example, there is money that can be asked for by customs authorities, and there's also a special Brexit facility where money can be asked for. So I think overall our ports have invested, have done investments in the infrastructure, and I think they are quite well prepared. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I see Hannes.
Please push the speak button.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
We could now try. Okay. Yeah, let's try now Ignacio again, and then later Hannes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I may complement to what my colleague Dominique said, there is an area where there have been several questions concerning, origin and information, whether the operators that are, trading from the UK or vice versa, and very importantly from the Union to the UK, know whether they meet the rules. Rules of origin are widely acknowledged to be complex to understand. I wanted to highlight that since the 1st of January, we have online a tool as part of the database Access to Markets, which is available in the Europa webpage and is accessible to everyone. Operators can get there and not only find out what the rule of origin for whatever they are exporting to the UK is, but they can go through a self-assessment process. So there is an interactive system of questions where they key in their product, they want to export it to the UK, and then they get the actual rule for that product, and then they can go through a set of questions that is interactive and helps them to identify whether they actually meet the rule or not. Of course, that is a non-binding tool, information which is contained there, but it is a very helpful tool to help them understand the rules, and we managed to have that online from the 1st of January this year.
Thank you so much. Now we try for last time to connect Hannes Krämer for some very final words.
Please press the speak button, sir.
Just to reply, I think we have a technical problem. Okay. I think you cannot hear.
We can hear you, but there's a huge echo. Could you try with your headset one more time? But otherwise, we just have to conclude, because I think the translators, they go punctually at 3:45. So probably you try to put on a headset. We tried the last time, and otherwise we conclude.
No, I would say
so the technical people are telling me that you have two devices, and this causes the echo. I don't know, can you try to switch off one of the devices you're having?
Please open the mic. Please push the speak button, Mr.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We tried to connect you, but somehow it doesn't work. And with the echo, we could really not understand you. But if you want, you can also send us in writing if you had something really important still to say, and we're going to distribute it amongst the members. But otherwise, thank you so much, dear colleagues from the Commission, for all the negotiation effort you took in the past year, and of course also for being present today and answering with patience our questions. I believe that we as parliamentarians still have some open questions that we have to dig into before we decide how we vote and so on and so on. At least I still have some open questions, but there is still some days coming up. I can remind you that we are working on this letter from the I.M.C.O, so please, the different groups should contribute to that. And there will also be at the end a resolution, I think, facilitated by the groups, but nevertheless, where we can, as Parliament, voice our opinion on the deal and our concerns and our demands. So thank you, colleagues, for all these excellent questions. I think it was really a very good and very fruitful debate. If there's any other business, I can just tell you that we meet again on the 28th of January. That's a Thursday in the morning from 9:30 to 12:30. I'm looking forward to seeing you there, and have a good afternoon.